Now, let's quickly begin our post lunch sessions by turning our attention to a few critical questions for our founders. Have you ever felt like the consistent grind was taking a toll on your energy or focus? Can building a successful company coexist with maintaining a balance and clarity? For our next session, Stop Glorifying Hustle Culture, Building Without Burnout. We'll dive into these questions and explore the realities of entrepreneurship beyond the nonstop grind. Panelists will share personal stories, practical strategies, and insights on leading and thriving business while staying energized, inspired, and resilient. So please join me in welcoming our panelists. I have Erica Hansen, CEO and founder of the Wisdom Collective LLC companies, Nikki Cruise, founder and owner of the Joy Inspired LLC, Jev Wray, the principal advisor at Maverixx LLC, Breanna Valdespino, the owner and clinical director of Joyful Journeys ABA Therapy, and Dr. T. Morris Fowler, the CEO and author of Fowler Media Group, and Ryan Hodges, the co founder and CEO of Marketer. Please welcome him to the stage.
Hello, everyone. So, we're going to start talking about the hustle culture and how it can overwork and burn everybody out. Can you hear me? So we built a few questions that we thought were really interesting to try to give us different perspectives since we all had different backgrounds. The first one, we're going to talk about performance versus pace. So, what's one signal to help a founder recognize whether they have a hustle culture in their own company or not? So, we're going to start to my left with Dr. T. We'll go down to Jev, and then I'll answer, and then we'll continue.
One of the things that founders always need to be aware of is objectives, right? You start with your objectives, what you want to do. And I'm a U.S. Air Force veteran, so that's kind of the way I say it. You can say your mission or your purpose for your business. All right. So once you get started and you get moving, okay, pace has to do and follow productivity. All right. So one of the things that you can gauge is each day as you're doing what you do, be aware of yourself. All of this starts with self-awareness because it's tied to self-care. All right. You want to get what you need to do done, but you want to do it in a way where it's not taking you down. So the way to gauge that is to become self-aware from the beginning when you start and start just noticing yourself during the day. Am I feeling anxiety? Am I tiring myself out? And that's a good place to start. And of course, we'll get into more later.
Thank you.
All right, I'm Bree Valdespino. I own Joyful Journeys ABA Therapy. So that is doing therapy with children on the spectrum and other developmental delays. So with that specifically, burnout is huge. So as the founder, as the clinical director with each and every one of my employees, I always do check-ins because you have to have a certain amount of patience, understanding, empathy, and really truly the drive and the love for the field to be able to continue working in the field. There is a very high turnover rate, but luckily with my company, I have so far been able to avoid that. And truthfully, I just let everybody know I have an open door. I have on my calendar the ability for them to go in and book one-on-one sessions with me, whether it's in person, whether they want to do it via Zoom, so we can have those check-ins. So there are times where I've had people come to me and say, you know what, the caseload I have, it's high rates of behaviors. Each and every kid is very aggressive all day. Can we switch up the schedules? Can we try to find some balance? And I will always say yes. And I already try to be intentional about that just to make sure that everybody has their peace of mind and is able to show up because we have to go in there happy, motivated, over the top. Like if you have kids and seen Miss Rachel, that is us every day, all day. So that balance and making sure that that burnout is not there is just it's essential to the whole function of it because without my staff, my business won't work. I need them. And so because I know that and I have that value in them, always do my check-ins.
Well,
I'm Nikki Cruise, and I'm all about joy and the joy factor. And when you recognize that the joy is missing, that's when you know you're operating in hustle culture. And it really is that simple. That's when you get to slow down and look at how you can reevaluate. That's it.
Well, then, I actually have a lot to say on this topic because all of my clients are actually founders. Funny enough, I work with a lot of startups, and there's something that's really common in startups that is, having that hustle culture. And a lot of founders do feel that it's necessary to get things off the ground, right? So there's a certain thing called 996, right? Which some people might not be familiar with that, but what it means is basically working from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week. It's typically found in like Chinese culture really, but it's been brought over here and accepted by a lot of like Silicon Valley founders because once again it's really about getting their stuff off the ground. And I myself, I also do work 996, which is not really fun, but the point is about building the dreams. Anyways, point I'm getting at is that I don't really see it all the time as like a negative thing, but to tie it back to performance versus pace, you really have to consider yourself as a founder and for your team. Is this heightening our productivity, or are we crossing a certain threshold where
Yeah.
we're plateauing and we're just starting to hit that wall, right? Are we kind of like pushing the boundaries, so to speak? Are we moving the needle, so to speak, or are we kind of just working harder and harder and harder and not necessarily finding a certain level of productivity that we're looking for? So I think approaching this, you have to have that happy balance. You have to really understand you know what am I actually getting back as an ROI from what I'm putting in. And the only real way to do that is to kind of take a step back and really understand when performance is actually starting to dip because of the excess amount of work, but also being able to maintain a certain pace to stay ahead of your competition and such.
And my perspective, I kind of piggyback on some of those things, but because I reorganize problem companies, a lot of those people are already maxed, right? They're ready to quit in some cases. So I've seen hustle culture and where it ends. So and when my group comes in to fix these things, if they're having some major cash instability, we're working, 18-hour days, like 7 days a week, sometimes traveling on top of that, right? Just to stabilize them. And sometimes it can be for, a year to 18 months. And then the project goes on for another year. So what I do with my organization actually is on Fridays, we don't like do full days with clients unless we're in crisis mode. Once we hit that first stabilization, then everybody takes a few days off, first of all. But on Fridays, we do half days. And that half day is usually a training day. And training day sometimes translates to boondoggle day, where you're unplugging, you're going to a barbecue, whatever it is, the baseball game, whatever, because you gotta decompress. So as a founder, for you to look for signs, so here's some of the ones. Uh, is it harder than it should? If you step back and go, why is this so hard? Right? That usually means you got signs that there's something off. Or you go, something just feels off, but I can't really put a name to it. Sometimes it's driving into your culture and you're not the only one feeling that, right?
Mhm.
So I think there's all of those things. But when you have instability in your low in the rest of your organization, that puts pressure on everybody. So if you're constantly fighting fires, if everything is a dumpster fire and everything that you put on your list as a priority for that day never got done because other urgencies came up, you have a problem. Let's talk, because it's only going to get worse. And then you're going to hit hustle is no longer hustle. Hustle is over the line. You're going to lose people. Retention's going to be bad. Eventually, it's going to affect your cash, your health, and everybody else around you. So that's what I found. And I'm usually in like the middle of it's already over the edge. And so I'm very aware of that for my teams as well.
Awesome. Awesome.
So our next question is about team impact, right? And we're going to start with Jeff, right? So there's a theory that some founders believe, which is if you slow down, it will hurt growth and you'll lose momentum. So the question is, do you subscribe to this theory or have any thoughts about it?
You know, it's so funny because I do subscribe to that theory. Um, I have this thing about me, and during the time of building my own company, that I always feel like I'm behind. No matter how much time I'm putting in, no matter how much I've gotten done for the day, how much I've gotten done for the week, how many things that I managed to do to like move the needle. I just feel like I'm always behind, right? And I've heard other people say it as well. Like, when you're kind of like in that grind, that's how you're going to feel, and that's how success is going to actually feel up until the point where you kind of cross that threshold, right? So you know the funny thing though is that I'm actually cognizant of the fact that I'm not behind though, so it kind of creates this weird dynamic for me that just keeps me going and keeps me urgent without making me anxious, or maybe even like overly concerned about my situation, right? So to answer your question, yes, I do subscribe to that theory, but for anybody else that does feel that pressure on their backs, you really have to kind of stay objective about it and kind of go through those emotions, but also accept the fact that you're doing what you need to do and you have what it takes, right, to keep going. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, I don't subscribe to that theory at all. And I do understand that when businesses start and we get to do some hustle, but we can go overboard. We can be pushing to produce so hard that what we're doing is just doing output, output, output. And where's the strategy that's going to keep us going? If your business cannot survive when you are not pushing, something's wrong. So there is a time where you get to take a breath and go, okay, what do I put in place? I'm slowing down from the production, but you're not slowing down from your business. So there is a difference in how you see it. You continue to build your business, but slow down in the hustle and build the strategy that's going to sustain you long term, because you're going to wear out if you just keep pushing and don't have the structure.
So
Wow, you know it's coming, right? You know it's coming.
I'm a little in between, right? So I definitely subscribe to that theory, but I had to learn to set boundaries. However, it was hard to ditch the idea that I had so many things to do. So I decided to duplicate myself. And so I started outsourcing. I started getting leads on my team and started to delegate tasks so I can still get everything that I need done in my mind to make me feel nice and calm, like I got all my goals for the week done without having to actually do them myself. So a little bit of a mix, I would say.
Okay. This is a paradox for me because, on the one hand, I have a philosophy that in order to get things done, you must do them. But at the same time, doing nothing sometimes is doing something. So, when is it time to move and do? When is it time to stop and do nothing? Now, that is again goes back into awareness. But as a young executive years ago, okay, working in corporate America, the problem that we had, and I come out of a manufacturing background, Japanese engineers were working, okay, and it was a great competition at that time between the US and Japan in regards to automotive and engineering. So the Japanese engineers started having a situation where they were literally working themselves to death. They were just dropping dead. So one of the things that was done to combat that, because obviously, you want to succeed in business, but I have a saying: a person that's deceased can't even have a bad day. So that's that. I mean, that's the ultimate too much. So Kaizen, and a lot of you probably, you know what Kaizen is, continuous improvement, right? So the philosophy of Kaizen works very well here as a founder. Okay. Small, daily, consistent improvements bring milestones of progress and success over the long term. The problem with the hustle culture is also what drives that is trauma. It's not just I got to grind, or I got to do, or I got to get this money. It's trauma, man. I come from this, and Oh, I don't want to be like them, and oh, I got to run it, and you start running, and your running looks like success. But what's driving to success is the trauma of the fear of what you're running from, and that a lot of times is not talked about, addressed, or even realized by the person who has the success. See, having $1 million is great, but when you have that mindset, now you want two, now you want four. When is it? You have to define, when did I get a milestone that I can just do nothing? Now, as a writer, I've written 25 books, okay? So when I write a book, I have to stop. Yes, there's a deadline for the next one. But see, in what I do as a creative, my mind drives, right? So you have to have your balance.
Wonderful. So I am in between, like Bree. And let me tell you, I am a person who loves to phase things, right? Because you can ease into it or ease out of it. You can put different things in place and you can get rest breaks in between. I subscribe to yes, it is a good theory, especially in the beginning, but you have to recognize when it's no longer serving you. Right. So, phase one, when you're kicking it off, yeah, full tilt, pedal to the metal. Let's make it happen. Small team. We're doing a lot of stuff. Let's get our goals done. But at some point in time, you have to pull back, do the reset, and say, okay, is this serving me now? Or do I have like the pot of gold that I need to go to phase two now, which is maintenance with intentional growth,
Yes.
right? That's where the different shift is.
Yes.
Now, one of the things that this panel debated when we met was the definition of hustle. Dr. T brought part of that up. So we were like, no, hustle as in overworking, right? But we also talked about hustle as a work ethic, right?
Yes. Yes.
And sometimes that work ethic kind of goes on steroids for some of us, type A's, right? I'm guilty. And not everybody works as a type A. Yes, I will send emails at 3 a.m. But yes, my team knows you're not expected to answer until you're back on clock. So, finding those balances, and yes, self awareness does become very important, especially when you're a type A and your team are other types, right?
Yeah.
So now let's talk about hidden trade offs. So, what are founders unintentionally sacrificing when they normalize the overwork, either in yourself or around the team? So, Dr. T?
When you crossed that line, and I took a deep breath because I remembered my journey, and it's a really powerful thing. When you cross that line and you fall into that situation, what you sacrifice is what everything that really matters to you. That's what you sacrifice: your relationships, your significant other, your children, your friends, and ultimately yourself. You see, nothing works unless you do. And if you're not working, everything starts at the top. You're a leader. So if you're off balance, your organization cannot be on balance. It doesn't work like that because everything starts at the top. Okay. So what you have to do is to understand, and I have a really good story, and I'm gonna make it really brief. All right. Um, I was traveling a lot. Okay, and I mean a lot. And I got home on a Thursday. I spent time with my kids, and I was married at the time. And I had to leave out on Sunday, and I remember to go to Kentucky. Okay. Um, Sunday came, and I backed my car out of the garage. And at this time, I'm like 30, 31, 32. And I got my wife and my daughters looking at me in the garage, standing as I'm, ready to go. So out of nowhere, my little girl, the youngest one, bolts out the garage, wraps her arms around my legs and said, Daddy, Daddy, you can't go. My family's Latino. Papi, papi, tú no puedes ir. De acabas de llegar. You just got here. You just got here. No, it's not fair. No, it's not fair. And I looked at this kid and I looked at everybody else, my wife, kids. I did that 3 times. And I said, okay, where you want to go? And I knew I was making a career decision. But I said, okay, where do you want to go? And immediately they loved Pizza Hut. Pizza Hut was good back then. The Vamos a Pizza Hut, and it was a big old party, and yay! And Daddy was the hero, right? So let me continue. I walk in the office on Monday, and my boss, I used to call him Jack. He was Jackie, but it's Jack. Jack looks at me. He says, "Aren't you supposed to be in Kentucky?" But I was an executive then, so I had the flexibility and the leeway. I said, Jack, I'll tell you about it. We never needed to have a discussion. He understood because that's the way we really had a real team. But that's one of the stories. See, that business unit, the parent companies are still in business, but that business unit went out of business in 2005. But today I'm still the hero of my children because I made that shift and understood that. And now I'm 62 and I'm still hero. So that's what you sacrifice.
Tough to follow. Um, so a lot of what he said, and my main thing was mental health and health in general, my body. I felt, I started my practice when I was in the third trimester of my third kid. So I set myself up for all of the chaos that I had brought into my life, which is fine. I'm the person that will do it, act now, and I'll deal with the rest later. And I realized after I started to see my health start to turn on me, I'm sleep deprived. And so that causes your mental health to be, not aligned with what you would like it to be. So then as a mother, I might get overstimulated more. I was forgetting things that I shouldn't forget. And I was trying to show up in ways that it just wasn't possible. And in the field that I'm in, the demand for providers like myself in behavior analysis, right, is so high. There's
Yeah.
very limited BCBAs in Las Vegas. So a lot of the clinics out here have 6 month plus wait lists. So as an emerging practice out here, I had clients back to back to back to back coming, and I'm just like, yeah, like welcoming it. I had no boundaries for myself. And so it got to the point where I looked at myself and I didn't see myself anymore. I didn't feel like myself and I wasn't acting like myself. And so I had to make a change. And so thank God for my village. My mom, my aunts, my husband, everybody came through, and my staff. Like, we're like a family. And I make it a point because we do all in home therapy, but I still make sure that we all know each other. We have meetings in person. Right now, I'm trying to plan a field day for all of us for team bonding. And because I've developed those relationships with everybody, they all stepped in when I needed them. And I was honest and transparent with everybody and was like, I'm not good right now. I might need a little bit more help. Please help me out. And so that has helped me get to the point where I'm at now, which I still truthfully will have my moments where I'm burnt out, 3 kids in a business and it's growing. Of course, I'm not going to sit here and lie and say that it doesn't happen. It does. But I started to implement my own practice, behavior analysis, to myself because it doesn't just apply to people on the spectrum and with other developmental delays. There's organizational behavior management. So I began to apply that same science to myself and to my business and to my staff. And now I can work on my mental health. If I need to go and just chill out and get my nails done, go get a silk press, then we're going to do that. So just prioritizing that and knowing that it's still important as growing my business. And so, yeah.
I so love that, Bree. And I think we get to remember always to be our own best clients. What we practice and what we share and train others to do, we get to do for ourselves. And yes, of course, we think that when we put people under pressure and we put ourselves under pressure, the only thing we're sacrificing is sleep, right? We are sacrificing so much more. The creativity that is there when we're present, the communication between our teams, even from ourselves, the clarity we have, and we have a mission for our business. We have a vision for our business. And when we're exhausted, we no longer are focused on that. And we're no longer walking in alignment with that. And when we exhaust our staff because we're running on hustle culture, they are no longer able to work in alignment with that. And as leaders, we start making decisions out of reaction instead of alignment when we're exhausted. So, yeah, We get to be our own best clients and listen to ourselves and take that break.
Weller, you guys are not gonna like this because it's about to be a hard left turn over here. Because first of all, I'll start with some of the founders I've worked with and what they are unintentionally sacrificing, right? And very much everything you guys described. You're unintentionally at times sacrificing, your mental health, your sleep, your just overall physical health as well. At times, it can get really intense, when the pressure builds. But I wanted to kind of shift the perspective real quickly and talk about what you intentionally are sacrificing, right?
Mm.
And when you're building a business, you have to sacrifice things in order to be that person
Yes.
to move the needle forward in order to reach that level of success. I mean, you just can't have everything that you want without actually taking the time to consider the things that you don't want as well, or take the time to consider the things that you're willing to give up to get to that point, right? And I'm sure all of us can relate to that. Every
Yeah.
one of us here have had to intentionally sacrifice something to build what we're building, right? So, me personally as well, I'll share a story about some of my personal sacrifices. And, when I was building my business for the first time, the first year I was in for myself, everything was going, somewhat well. Managed to turn a profit that first year, so I'm thinking to myself, all right, great. POC knocked it out of the park, right? Now, it was the second year that really started to beat me down because, no matter how hard I was working, things just started falling apart. And that's when I started to think about how much I was really juggling, at that time. And I went through a period where I very intentionally decided to remove certain elements of my life, intentionally sacrifice these things because I just knew they weren't going to serve my purpose going
Mm.
forward. And it was things like, going out often with my friends on the weekends. It was things like, taking some time to myself during the daytime to just, relax or like, recover. But it's, when I really reassessed it, I was thinking to myself as well that I could have been doing more in those moments. I had more left in me, right? Even furthermore from there, my girlfriend at the time left her right then and there because I really wanted to take some more time to focus on me, and all of these various sacrifices that I really took in those moments. I didn't take them lightly. It wasn't a thing where like, oh, I'm just throwing things out of my life just so I can, do me, right? It was me being very conscious with myself and acknowledging that all of these pieces that I'm intentionally removing from my life and or sacrificing, I know I'm putting them away because of a greater purpose that's pulling me at this current moment in time. I know there's a call to action that I'm going to respond to, and I know that these things just are not going to fit in my future that I'm walking towards. So, realistically, there are some things that, very much unfortunately will unintentionally happen, during the journey of like building your success. But, there are some things as well that you need to be very mindful of that you do need to leave behind in your past. There's some things that you do need to just kind of remove out of your way as obstacles because, without that intentional sacrifice, I mean, I guarantee you're just not going to be able to manifest the life of your dreams and the life that you want, right? So, I mean, that's kind of my take on it as well. But at the end of the day, always be mindful of what you are sacrificing.
So to piggyback on that, I do resonate because when I do have those tough moments where I do realize I am sacrificing certain things for what I want, I just tell myself, okay, work hard now so I don't have to later.
Hmm.
Build what I have to do now, do what I have to do now so I don't have to later. Because my goal is freedom.
Yes.
Truthfully, that's my goal. I want to be able to go visit my kids when they're in college and stay for a month if I want to at an Airbnb. Like that's my end goal. So if I have to do all this now and then have the moments where I do sacrifice, my sleep for a couple of days, then that is just what I have to do because it is what it does take to get to the goal that I want. So I guess I'm a in betweener with that too.
Well, can I just add to that that I totally agree. I think that the point is not to let that become the culture. It's to not let it become the subconscious rule of thumb, but an intentional choice because we do make sacrifices and we know where we're going. And if we don't have the joy, if we don't have the joy of knowing where we're going, we don't have the strength to get there. That helps us make those sacrifices. But if we just end up subconsciously making those sacrifices because we're pushing to get the next bit out and the next bit done, we're not going to have the strength to get through those choices. We're not going to have the strength for us to keep going afterwards. So, yes, I agree, but it can't be the culture
Right.
of just push, push, push. Has to be intentional.
Right.
Amen.
Absolutely.
So, Bree, you hit on a point. On my wall of affirmations, it's not about the money, it's about the freedom that comes from the money. And every single founder has that in the back of their mind, whether they've expressed it or not yet, right? So, for me, um, it took burnout to really see it. And I've worked corporate consulting and everything else in between. And I worked for an organization that, you wanted to take a day off to go to the doctor and you had to jump through some hoops and then you got the cold shoulder and it was a really bad hustle culture, right? And so it, it made me realize one thing that every founder needs to realize. Can anybody tell me in this room what is the most valuable resource in life?
Time,
Time.
Time. Why?
because you can't get it back.
Yeah.
You can't get it back and you can't increase it,
Yeah.
right? Unless you do mini me stuff, right?
Yeah.
Where you get mini me's. So it took me breaking down to say, I can never get this time again. And that with that, not getting that time again, I realized that weren't the relationships, right? Things were falling apart in the personal life. And it really made me realize that when that company was having me travel, I went 3 months, had 5 days at home, and they were not consecutive, right? And then I had to move houses during that time, and I couldn't even get time to look at other houses. So the next thing that is the lessons learned. So, yes or no, have you ever been burnt out? I said yes. And then what did it teach you? Mine was one person cannot save a company, right? No matter how hard you work, the company is not going to survive or not based on you, right? Even if you are the founder, you cannot do it by yourself. So, Dr. T?
This is so revealing. At age 54, my mother was dying, and I was sandwiched between my adult children with children. I actually went through that. Yes, I was in a hospital looking up at the ceiling, and I was dying, and I knew I was leaving here. I saw my heart. I saw the machines. I can honestly say I wasn't afraid. I'm a doctor, but it is in divinity. So me and God got a relationship. And the thing was, in that moment, I began seeing I wasn't taking care of me. Okay. I wasn't taking care of me. And I just said to myself, if I get up off this hospital bed, things are going to be different. I didn't say, God, oh, if you do this. No, I didn't make, and I can honestly say that I didn't make no promises, no nothing. I just said, if I get up off this hospital bed, things are going to be different. And when I got up off that hospital bed, 2018, and I'm just going to share, I found that I was septic and had been so for over a year.
Oh,
How am I here? As a veteran, I'm standing in the VA. They're asking me, would you like to donate your organs? No. Would you? No. Do you need another language? No. Okay. And this is a true story. So they said, listen, we got to put some really strong antibiotics in you. All right. And as you see, I survived. Then isn't life grand? 2 years to recover, then COVID hits. Then I realized if I'd have got sick 2 years later, I might not be here. So it was during that gap that I started writing, and at that time, to go with Nikki, you see, my first book was vibrational energy, about being in vibrational alignment, and I learned if I shift into vibrational alignment with source, okay, then as the scripture says, goodness and mercy shall follow me. This is not about religion. This is esoteric wisdom. hidden in plain sight. Okay? Goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. What's the condition? Vibrational alignment. So when you shift into vibrational alignment, then I realize I don't have to pursue. I don't have to push. I don't have to hustle. See, we say what is for me is for we, then we go out and act like nothing is for me unless I take it. You see? So we speak words and then we do the opposite of what we're saying. And I'm going to end with this. I came up with a syndrome that I call the butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker. Everybody's got bread, everybody's got meat, everybody's got light, except the butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker. Why? They didn't remember to take care of themselves.
Wow.
I want to add really quickly what they don't tell you about when you do spectacularly crash and burn is how long it takes to come back.
Yeah.
Even if you do nothing, it is still a long road to recovery. So it's best not to get there.
So I think my perspective is a little different generationally. So I'm a 96 baby in the cups of millennial Gen Z, right? So mental health awareness is much more discussed in the community, online, and through friend groups and family. So because of that, I was able to recognize things early on because at the end of the day, your mind controls your body. If your mind's disrupted, your body will be disrupted and you will get other things l- like the sepsis situation or stroke or other things. And because I am aware of that, I was able to be hyper vigilant when it came to my body and my mind. And so thankfully, and I'm grateful that I did have that knowledge and just being in the mental health field in general to recognize these patterns early. So my burnout was a little different. I think I was able to kind of interject at a good point early on in my life, um, and recognize that it just comes from being in survival mode, from being conditioned to be in survival mode because my parents were in survival mode and their parents were in survival mode, right? So breaking those generational habits and understanding that it's okay to now let that go and to be very, very intentional on breaking those habits that we were taught. So my situation, maybe my burnout looks different, but I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that I was able to. And then even being on this panel, I am learning how bad it really can get. So although I'm up here, I'm still getting educated and seeing, you know what, now I really have to prioritize all that even more. I can't go back. I can't get back into old habits and I have to continue to push past it even when things are growing faster than I wanted to and just understand to keep those boundaries so it doesn't get to that point.
Oh, it's awesome being on a smart panel where people recognize that burnout isn't just the physical burnout. It comes from up here. It comes from that place where you've been pushing for so long. Your body has been saying, help, help, help. And your mind has been saying, no, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep going. And they get into war with one another. And I experienced that. I'm total Jesus freak. And it's okay if you're not, but he was a cool dude.
He was.
But, so my foundation is scripture, is alignment with God. And having that alignment is the foundation. When you get out of alignment, you start getting burnt out because you're running, trying to pursue something that was never meant yours to carry. And I remember sitting down, getting client checks in, being successful, and sitting there feeling empty. And that was my first sign that I was burning out. My success meant nothing. There was no passion or joy behind it. And I realized I was out of alignment. And if your success is costing your joy, you are burning out. And that is not what anyone needs in life. I don't believe anyone has a purpose that they should burn out creating. So recognize when you're out of alignment and you're losing the joy, that's the first signal.
When I'm coaching, I call that the hollow.
The hollow, yes.
First of all, Dr. T, the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, I really like that. I really did because, you know, taking the time to really consider like taking care of yourself. A lot of times I catch myself in my grind, and I'm an extremely resilient person, right? Because of just the pressures I've had to face and what I've had to overcome and the weight of my ambition and everything else. but it really made me, stop and think about like my overall, you know, what am I, how am I really producing in these moments where I'm just kind of pushing to the absolute limit, when I'm actually breaking through my limits and pushing boundaries, right? And there was a significant moment for me back in the day, about 2 years back, where it was in that dark moment where I, kind of started stripping things away out of my life to kind of pave the path forward for myself. And the thing is that I was actually working 7 days a week, right? Because I'm like, the sooner I get to my dreams, the sooner I'm going to be at the happiest moment in my life, right? However, what I was not thinking about is, how little sleep I was getting, right? How much, time I was kind of just focused on work versus just kind of pushing people out of my life, right? And, it made me really think about, oh, okay, I do need to make a few changes here. And I do need to actually like take some time to recharge, because that burnout moment was, I got up for work this morning. Typically, during that time, I was starting at like 4 a.m. and ending at midnight. And so I could not function that day. I mean, I was staring at the computer screen, I'm telling you, I was falling asleep staring at the computer screen. I'm wondering to myself, is this? I'm not even getting anything done, right? And just sat there for a few hours, and I remember kind of just taking a step back, taking a breathe on it, and I live in South Florida, so the beach for me is like a 15-minute drive, and so I was like, you know what? We're going to the beach. We're going to go for a swim, and we're going to take some time to really think about, how we're going to kind of come back and take on the day, the next day that is. But, I really, on the way to the beach, I really started to think about the fact that, like, you have all this resilience, yes, but, you're still human, right? You're still going to hit that wall, and you're still going to have to face the fact that you do need to rest, right? So, I took the time to really meditate about that on the beach that day. And, that became, actually, funny enough, a weekly practice for me. For me to, on Sundays, instead of starting work, what I do is that more or less kind of like rearrange my apartment, like just do my chores, generally speaking, just make sure my environment is, in alignment, actually. That's why I call it too. And then thereafter, head to the beach, go for a swim, and take some time to really think about, the week coming, if you will, right? And I'd use that Sunday as just that recharge day, because being in that state where I just completely crashed at my desk, it made me realize that, look, like, part of being productive is also resting, right? And you learn that the hard way at times, but you learn it one way or another.
Yeah, and you know that it's wrong when somebody's talking to you or you're reading like an email or something, you reread it or you're hearing them, but you're not hearing them. They sound like Charlie Brown's teacher. You guys remember that? It's like wah 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 wah, and you're like, I didn't get any of that.
Just drones out.
That's a clue. You should like unplug.
Yeah. And just to, can I just add to that? We build our dreams and we push towards our dreams, but our company isn't the only thing of our dreams. Our company and our business is what's making our dreams possible. And by the time we get this company built, there's no people left. There's no life left outside of it.
Right.
If we go in like that, we have to broaden it. Our life is our company and our company is our life. We can't separate the two if we are the leaders, but we do have to understand how to integrate both to have our dreams come true.
Now, before we wrap up our panel really quick, I want everyone in this room, I want you to stretch, just stretch for a minute, right? Then I want you to say, I am agile.
I am.
Imagine.
I can do this.
I can do this.
And I freaking rock.
But I
And I
rock.
freaking rock.
There you go. You're all founders. So thank you very much for hanging out with us, especially on the third day. You guys are diehards. Congratulations. I have some notebooks here, the little orange notebooks. They're great for your bag. I do not want to carry them home. Please take some. Thank you, guys. Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank
you.
you
Great,
all.
great conversation.